Welcome to the first episode of AdVenchr into Tech with me, Ben Charlton, and Jaspreet Manor. Today we are joined by a really special guest, a complete kind of triple threat across the intersection between music, creative, education, and technology. He is a producer for Seven Wallace and Universal Music, has worked with A.R.Rahman, Will.i.am, Che Lingo, Idris Elba. Oscar nominee, spoken at NATO, has won design awards in pretty much every category known to man. Welcome to the podcast, Manon Dave.
Cheers, man. That was, you're way too kind. Way too kind.
I guess kind of the obvious question that everyone has whenever they meet you is, how the hell do you find time to do it all?
Oh, man, it's one of those things. Yeah, I do get that a lot. But preceding that question is usually the one which I've been trying to find a cleaner answer to recently, which is what do you do? And I think that's actually the harder one. And I've been saying a lot recently. I think the way I've started to sort of think about answering that is, can I swear on this, by the way?
Yeah.
I forgot to ask you that. I make cool shit, right? And that's kind of it might come across a little bit conceited to say it like that, but I feel like we're constantly kind of trying to aggregate, the answer to that question so that it's digestible for somebody. And when you say that, and then you want to unpack that, and I start talking about some of the threads that you mentioned, I think naturally that next question is, okay, but how are you doing this? And I think you'll like this one because I've known you for a little bit. Let me ask you this question: how long do you? I would guess that you could spend an hour, or possibly even up to 15 hours if you go back to uni days, which you do regularly, playing COD.
Yeah, comfortably.
And it's why? It's stimulating you, I'm sure, to some degree.
Yeah.
It's fun. You probably kind of let off some steam, as most people would say, and ultimately you're kind of working, you're kind of really activated and alert, and all of those, I think, senses that get heightened, but you're not impacted by it.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's a different kind of tired, even if you stop. And that tired is literally, you can go on for ages, 12 hours sessions, 10-hour sessions. And that's what I liken it to. I don't play COD. My shit was Football Manager back in the day. But I've lost entire relationships on that. But I think that's what it is, man. It just doesn't feel like work. Because, again, we identify ourselves that way. But I feel like it's I just get to make cool stuff and things that I enjoy doing, people I enjoy hanging out with, things I would actually use. And so for that reason, it's you sort of find the time, if that's a good answer.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've spoken to you times where you've left the studio, left work, then gone straight to the studio, then left the studio, then gone straight back to work, then gone back to the studio.
Yeah.
That, do you not find you run out of steam at some point?
Yeah, man. But then it's as you can probably tell by my physique, I don't really care much about body strength. But I liken, I'm a big sports fan, you know that already. And so I liken it to sports. I like the idea of that mindset of it's not I'm not going to kind of go down the rabbit hole of the whole I just want to win or any of that. It's just more there's there's an adrenaline rush after the fact.
Yeah.
There's an adrenaline going into it, and then you start to feel fatigue and all that other stuff. But when you come out the other side, it's you actually, something didn't exist, now it exists. And I can't stop looking at it, or I can't stop listening to it, because it's that fascination of the ability to create. And for me, that just spawns another creation cycle. And I think obviously you want to stop doing that thing, but what about the next thing? Again, it goes back to COD. You're going to stop after an 18-hour day and play 6 hours of COD.
Yeah. Comfortably as well.
It's a bit like the Japanese ikigai, right? You find something that you're good at, that motivates you, impacts the world, and makes you money. And you've kind of found that, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what at least the good at part, questionable, right? You want to get better at it. But I do think that it starts with you, it doing something for you. And
agreed.
A lot of people want to do it because I want to make stuff so people use it. That is true too. But I just, to be honest, I just enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
it makes me happy to do it. So
Yeah.
that's why I feel like the sustaining of the energy happens, I guess, naturally.
But I mean, I think kind of one of the sort of more incredible things about you is your knowledge around a lot of different areas, and being able to apply yourself in so many different disciplines, whether that is creative, kind of education, the technology side of things, whatever that looks like, and kind of to get to the point where you've got this knowledge across so many different places. Is it that you were kind of just responsible for your own learning? Was it more like a mentorship? How did you get to be that knowledgeable or kind of have that network in so many different spaces?
I think it's like, I see it a little bit differently, man. Like I'm okay with, and I promise, yes, I do need to, I think, embrace some of the things I've done. You can, like my granddad always says, you can only connect the dots backwards, right? And like, so now I can look back on things and be like, wow, actually, yeah, I did that. I actually had that thing in the Apple store or whatever. But like in the process of it, and, I think it's most recently popularized as imposter syndrome, but I feel like it's not. I don't even like necessarily calling it that. I think it's just the humility to know that you're actually just bang average at that thing. And that's completely okay.
Yeah.
Like I aspire to be bang average, believe it or not. Like I know that when it comes to music, for example, I've been making music since I was 16. If you can even call it making music, like it was just, I couldn't play. I still can't play any instrument well. I make all of my music using technology and computers. I was making literally like things that were as bad as the Crazy Frog ringtone at age 16 to 18. And then slowly but surely I started to be able to create melody and at least mimic rhythm of my favorite producers and whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that like it's, for me, I just never want to be the best at something in the room. Like, because then you're not learning, you're not improving, and I think that's kind of the thing that I sort of focus on more is when you say you have so much knowledge in these things, I probably have more than average knowledge because I've been doing it for X amount of years, and most importantly, I've been doing it around people who are better than me.
Yeah.
And I think that's, so, affiliate marketing, sure, I spent 6 years in performance marketing, affiliate marketing. My knowledge is very outdated, but if I'm talking to somebody today who is in that industry, I can understand what they're talking about, and I can then, I think, throw in layers of things that I've learned along the way, completely unrelated to affiliate marketing, and I think, become a translation layer to that information. And I think that's the part that I really have started to realize, that actually, I love the film Everything All Everywhere All at Once, which just came out because the film's great, but it's really, that title just made me think like, yeah, actually that is what's happening. You constantly dipping and diving through the experiences you've had to sort of pick out ways of understanding something else. That's really all we're doing, right? And I think so. Yeah, I don't know if I have tons of knowledge in all those areas. I think what I have is a lot of interest in learning about those areas. Yeah.
And do you feel that kind of something that's become a relatively obvious common thread for you from the work you did with Education First and the Study Buddy and stuff like that? Kind of education is obviously an important topic and kind of something that you're clearly passionate about, and clearly education of you or yourself, kind of education is quite important. Why is education why is it such a big theme throughout your career and throughout your life?
Probably because, again, I was just okay at it.
Yeah.
So I think like academically, I actually I was better than average, but I was still still average, if you know what I mean, right? I excelled in some things, like I was really great at, English literature, English language, that kind of stuff. Any of the technology stuff, I was decent at, business, whatever. And I was just horrible at maths and terrible at physics and, just like any normal person. But I think that where I was good, and I can't remember, I'm trying to think about who said this. There's somebody, I follow folks who inspire me as well, and I heard from somebody at one point, which really stuck with me on social media or whatever, that like, why are you focusing on the things that you're like really not good at? Just focus on the things that you're kind of okay at, because you obviously have an ability there to develop that as a skill set and to really master something or even get close to mastering it. And so that's what I started doing, I think, from a pretty young age. Now that I look back on it, was I'd go to English literature class, I'd go to English language class, A levels now, I'd go to business, and like I sort of did maths because my dad sat with me when I picked my A levels, and I was like, oh, what about psychology? And he's like, psychology, you did maths. So I picked maths, and I knew I was crap at it. I just knew it already, and I used to just bunk off. And what did I do when I bunked off? I didn't. Frankly, I was too much of a chicken to do anything outrageous. So I used to literally jump on the Northern Line and go South Bank Centre and just sit and just like spend whatever pocket money I had on like watching a matinee show of like some Tchaikovsky's whatever symphony. Not that I even know or really care that much about classical music.
Yeah.
But I just knew that like being around music, trying to understand what was going on, and like there was something about it which just triggered me, and I really wanted to dive into that. So for me, getting like extrapolating that from people through education, and I guess technology was my layer to learn.
Yeah.
Doing that with technology, to answer your question, I think is fascinating to me. I just feel like if that could happen for me and beat making, what else can you learn through this method of play, right?
So one of the questions, because my knowledge of the music industry is probably like most people, like 99% of the public, we download songs from Spotify, whatever, and we consume music. None of us know, apart from the artist that's on that person, that's the name you see. And then people start talking about kind of producers and stuff like that. Until I met you, I had no idea what a producer even did. Or this kind of weird body. That's
probably not what I do.
Yeah. Can you just for kind of my own sort of sanity, what does a producer actually do?
Okay, well, I mean, this is now, I guess, some people would say there's a definition. Some people say that it's a matter of opinion. I thought I was a producer from the very beginning because I used Fruity Loops to make to make basic sounding, drum loops, right? And yeah, that's, to be fair, a lot of producers who are selling or streaming millions of records do that. But I got lucky sort of along the way, basically. Like early on out of university, I got lucky. I met one of my mentors, A.R.Rahman, who you mentioned, who's obviously, it's like he's sold more records than Michael Jackson and the Beatles. So that says it all, right?
Wow.
So like just observing what he does.
Yeah.
At that point I wouldn't even described him as a music producer. I would just be like, he's a composer.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just, you're just doing something else. You're not making hip hop loops in your bedroom. And then later on in my career, I when I was doing some of the music tech products, obviously a lot of musicians started using our products, and I got to meet here in London, actually in Chiswick, Will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas, who also became a bit of a sort of partner, mentor, etc. for me. And in a story I can go into if you want to later, I ended up by complete fluke working with him on music with a couple of other friends of mine, Marco and Jack. And so we're working on the Black Eyed Peas records and stuff, and watching him make music in a hyper different way to AR.
Yeah.
And getting into a conversation with him specifically about this question of like, how do you differentiate? What is a producer? And he was like, look, here's how I see it. He's like, there's beat makers, completely fine, just kind of stuff I was doing. And then there's producer songwriters, right? And his way of sort of, in that moment anyway, maybe his perceptions change, I have no idea. But, his way of explaining it to me was, if you're a beat maker or if you're a producer essentially that wants a profile, right? You want to be Will.i.am, you want to be Timbaland, you want a sound that is associated with you.
Yeah.
Then you're really an artist, or like in the music sense, you're an artist. What a producer is really doing is essentially being a mirror for the story that the artist wants to tell.
Okay.
Right? And I think that's an important part because it kind of crosses over between making the beat or making musical decisions, but also making songwriting decisions, making delivery decisions.
Yeah.
Thinking about the effects and processing of that vocal to, add a reverb to like make it feel more, epic, or like you're in Dartford Tunnel with no cars in it or whatever. Like, these are the choices, is curation.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of that made me completely change my perspective on what I wanted to do in music.
And you spoke quite sort of, you can see your eyes light up when you talk about the technology in music, and obviously you've been responsible for creating and working on some of the most widely known kind of pieces of kit for music creation now, from kind of Native Instruments, Rolly, things like that have obviously done some really good work. you've won awards for the system and things like that you've created, which obviously have have done really, really well. Technology and music seem to have a massive intersection. Kind of, do you feel like what's kind of next? I mean, obviously we've spoken at length about sort of generative AI in music and so on. Where do you feel kind of that's going?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think like I have the optimist's view when it comes to this stuff, right? Because like I said, I'm bang average at most things. Through technology, I basically was able to Iron Man myself in certain areas, right? In certain areas. And I think that like I don't see that as a bad thing, because ultimately it's given me opportunity, and and given me the ability to kind of create or carve a path for myself where I'm still not the best musician, but I get to do things like some of the stuff you listed, right? And it's outrageous to me that we're able to do that. But I think it's awesome, and it means that somebody else with imagination can create something. So I think that's where we're at with all of this generative AI stuff, including in music. Can it just make a song beginning to end? Yes, I've actually sort of seen that, right?
Yeah.
But who is prompting or whatever, it's still, I still believe that the person operating the machine should be the best person to operate the machine. Not bang average, anyone can make a song and whatever, or anyone can write a book with ChatGPT. I think it really matters that the people who are the most talented, the most skilled, the most creative in that area leverage those tools early, because it's just going to make for a new art form or an evolution of that art form.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to the fact that, so I started playing with the Reactor by Native Instruments.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can attest that if you don't know what you're doing, it still sounds like shit.
I got to hear that. You didn't tell me that.
No, I did not. I'll be honest with you.
Have you heard his?
I haven't heard it yet.
Even just getting the controls to it, man. I think that there's this, the music industry is one that, it's kind of like law or accountancy. There's so many bits that they're trying to sort of keep the normals out and stuff like that. And it's one of those things that I think it's been so, there are platforms out there now that obviously are kind of there for everyone's use, but you still need to know what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%, man. I gave a talk recently at this the Mind Valley AI Summit over in Estonia, and I wanted to go beyond just like a deck, so I actually decided to do like an on-stage demonstration using Will.i.am by Google, and like a combination of tools, Midjourney to create some images, Runway ML to kind of create this like parallax video of the frame interpolation thing where it's called sort of zooms out, and pairing that with music and just showing people like, look what you can make so quickly. And I found myself actually making the music using Will.i.am, or like prompting the music, heard something I liked, but then the creative kicked in, right? And I downloaded it, and I'm like, all right guys, what I'm about to show you now is not an AI tool, so don't be freaked out. I opened FL Studio and I started like drawing automation curves and filtering it and like making it sound like a Drake song or whatever. Like, and I just started doing this stuff, and then, but that's the key, I think, like at the end of the day, sure, it's a great thought starter, it's a great tool, but you want people who are actually skilled at that thing or talented to some degree at what they're doing to really drive the narrative,
I think it's that 80-20, right? It'll get you nearly there, but you need to be able to kind of edit and create and kind of add your own flair to it. It's kind of, we've spoken about this at length about kind of content creation and kind of a lot of the people that we speak to kind of day to day, that you get the bare bones of something, or kind of quite kind of meat on the bones, I suppose. But it still sounds robotic, wooden, and kind of not quite finessed enough to be something that you'd want to push into the wider world.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. I think that's the crux of it. It has to be something which, if it starts to become something where it becomes commoditized, I think Instagram is a great example. Everyone hears the example of like, the amount of skill you would have needed to have to take a picture, develop the picture, or develop it with what we call filters now, but essentially, doing the color grading, all of that other stuff. And it's like a tap and a swipe or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. It's made everybody a photographer.
Yeah.
And does that mean they're all world-class photos? Is photography dead? Obviously not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of, I think, what we're going to see a bit with this generative AI stuff.
I think that's really interesting though. Kind of, it's almost become the, where machines replace people, and this is the big fear for a lot of people that, is my job still going to be there? Yeah. And there's no doubt in the fact that AI will replace certain kind of sort of lower level jobs where there is an automation available and kind of robotic processes and stuff like that. But I think in terms of the creative industry, in kind of generative AI, music, photography, film, whatever, it's and even kind of software engineering and things like that, where you can create code with prompts these days.
Yeah.
I still think, we had this conversation last week, that I think that you still need someone who really knows what they're doing to create the best solution to the problem, rather than just a solution to the problem.
My whole thing is that, like, I know it sounds cliche or whatever, but I genuinely believe it. Like, storytelling always wins. And to put a less cliche thing on it is that, and very pragmatic business kind of approach to it, is that consumer always wins. Like, everyone is consuming first.
Yeah.
Do you really give a fuck that you used to go to Blockbuster and then now you have everything, baked into your TV with an internet connection? For consumers, if we're being honest, no, we don't. We actually prefer it. And I think that, so going back to your point, I think that it's not so much it's taking my job as a filmmaker in that sense, right? That's a whole separate discussion about the SAG strikes and all that. But actually, in every case that you sort of look back on, again, it's the tool set that it's the industry that is developing the tool set that is most affected. So now you just can't make DVDs and VHSs anymore, dude. Yeah. Like, you have to. Do you know what I mean? But guess what? We need lots more content. Yeah. Filmmakers you guys need to, like, churn out content real quick. Yeah. Same with music, right? And I think, and same with the photography thing. Kodak can't make rolls of film as much as they used to, or they can't make as much money on that. You got to reinvent, because there is still a photography industry. You know? So I think that's kind of my take on it.
One thing I wanted to ask was, and bringing it back a little bit, obviously as like a music novice, right? You just listen to music and you ingest it. How does AI actually play a part in music? Because, like, you got, for like a simpleton, you write lyrics, you have a beat, and then you just kind of mix the two together, and then obviously it becomes a track, right? Mm-hmm. Where does AI actually, like, in layman's terms, actually play a part in music nowadays, and how is it doing it more so?
So, when I worked at Native, who make Reactor, and I remember getting the job because I had no idea how to actually make physical products, or even music software. I was making marketing software at the time, but I just remember telling them, like, look, I've been illegally downloading your software for the last 8 years. I don't know much about the hardware because I can't afford it. But I tell you what, I believe this could be easier to use for someone like me, right? And I think that mindset, just like it later hit education, I think hit the music industry in and around sort of 2013, 2014. And the tools that people like, well, not even me, like people like Will.i.am and the Pharrells, Timberlands, etc., were using it, started to develop and become, let's say, more, best way of phrasing it, I guess, is automated, right? In the sense that if you wanted to have a quick mix, what you're describing of, melding the musical parts and the vocal parts together to sound crisp and like almost radio ready, that would need an engineer, and it would need somebody spend hours and hours and hours, like, looking at frequency curves and all that stuff. There became, there started to be companies that were tackling that problem by saying, look, much like an Instagram filter, here's a quick way of, like, you getting a hip hop mix or getting a whatever mix. And it's not that it was the final product, but it's more like a later stage starting point, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. So that's how it was being used. Then auto-tune, you probably know about, popularized, right? And so, again, you want to hear T-Pain sing. He's actually an outstanding singer. Yeah. And it was almost a mistake to stumble upon that usage of it. But nonetheless, that's what this AI, right? It's essentially just hearing that you're this far off pitch, in this guy's case, canyons away from, and then it's just like, and then it's just trying to find the closest note, to match. So that's how it's being used historically. And I think now, as with these, Ben talks about these new tools, I think now people are maybe using it even as a thought starter for the actual melody or rhythm.
So, kind of moving forwards, obviously you've done a huge amount kind of over in the music industry, and most recently you've moved to, so you're now Chief of Product and Design at Mindvalley. Mindvalley was a brand that I'd never heard of until I met you. What is Mindvalley?
Yeah, so I mean, weirdly, I kind of recognized the brand when they first approached me, but I didn't really know why. And so Mindvalley is basically a what I would describe as a personal growth platform. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. They've been around for, I believe, over 15 years. Relatively large company. Like, it's about 400 people, profitable. And so it's one of these amazing stories. But fundamentally their focus has been helping people reach their goals, right? And those goals, I think, in more recent times have been quite siloed when you look at similar platforms. Like you could compare them to Calm or Headspace or Masterclass. They've been quite siloed. So it's like it's about mindfulness, or it's about, you know, like excellence in your skill set or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas, and I would describe that as like the app approach, right? Doing one thing really, really well.
Yeah.
I think what Mind Valley has is essentially this operating system approach. They're like sort of what I would describe as the operating system for personal growth.
Yeah.
You know, they have meditations and they have entrepreneurial courses and they have like relationship and parental advice and courses and whatever. And they actually don't mind if you do any of that stuff elsewhere. Like you could do it in Calm app, but you know, leveraging the technology, like, you know, with wearables and things like that, what they do is kind of aggregate that and supplement that content. But really, rather than focusing on the streak or the trend of like you doing this every day and like building habits, which is a part of it, they actually really focus. They deep dive into your goals and outcomes, which was fascinating to me, because I thought that's really what we're all about, right? We just have this vision of like we want to do that or buy that house or start our business or have kids or whatever. And I think that's more how people think, rather than I need to really like get better at going for a jog every day. Because that's a harder pill to swallow almost. So
especially the jogging.
Yeah, so that's what they do. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, and kind of obviously AI is now becoming kind of more and more baked into the business as well, and I know that there's kind of talks happening all the time around that. How is AI being used within Mind Valley right now?
So I have to say, man, it's completely transformed the business. Like it really has, and I think Vish is testament to Vishen for, again, I think being more of an optimist, being an early adopter. I've been noodling around with what everyone's calling AI, these generative tools, you know, for like the last year or so, of course, at least. But once I think Vishen, he deep dived on it, I think over the course of a week or 2 weeks, and he came back out of that hole and he was just like, right, like town hall, right? team meeting time. This thing is actually outstanding. Like, you know, and it's like, is it perfect? Is it going to like write all of our marketing copy for us? No, right? But if we are not using this every day, if we're not like, you know, shaving off 20, 30, 40, in some cases 60% of our time doing the manual work by leveraging this thing, and I think the way I described it earlier is probably, you know, a good way of describing it, which is basically pushing your start point to a later stage in the normal process. If we're not doing that, like it is bad, it is trouble, you know, it is going to be trouble for us. Not in the sense that like everyone's going to lose their jobs, but fundamentally, you know, it's the typical business startup approach, first to market. Right. You might not have the superior product, but you got there first. I.e. ChatGPT to the Bards and the, you know, I forget the name of the other one, but you know, like it's that matters, you know, for most businesses. So I think that is the kind of thing that has changed the way that we've thought about AI internally. And in terms of your question of like, how is it leveraged? I mean, the marketing teams are using it to, you know, ideate around copy, around imagery, photography. You know, we still license photographs. We still go out and license stock footage or film or create films or whatever. But it's we leverage this to ideate, you know, and we actually see it now as an opportunity to broaden, as you said, the portfolio of, you know, if we're teaching parenting and relationships and mind, body, and spirit and all this other stuff, then it certainly is part of, at a minimum, the entrepreneurial aspect of it. AI has to be at one of the core things you're teaching and thinking about. So we did this AI summit recently, and we've got an AI mastery program which rolls out in September as well.
One of the kind of sort of just thinking kind of laterally here, obviously the next generation of kind of professionals and kind of our kids and so on will grow up in a world where AI is just baked into their everyday life, and it's something that it's already kind of there, but we don't really know about it. But it will be something that they need to be able to understand, control, prompt, and do in the right way to elicit the right response. Education is something that kind of, how do you educate kids on that? How do you get them to kind of understand it and kind of be able to work with that?
This was one of the awesome things about this this thing that Mind Valley do is called Mind Valley University.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually have this insane. Like when I first heard about this, I was like, I have to just understand if this is some Dharma initiative, like cult situation. What is this? But I have to say, I've come back from there literally a couple of weeks ago now. I was fascinated. So Mind Valley University is this event essentially where for 3 weeks, a couple of thousand people move to a place from wherever they are. They bring their kids. Like it's not a holiday. It's basically a hyper focused education learning event, right? And so that happened in Tallinn, Estonia this year. And I obviously was going to speak there. There was this AI summit we were doing, which is 3 days as part of that. And whilst I was there, one of my colleagues, Gigi, she said, "Look, I'm programming the kids agenda, and we'd like for you to come and teach AI, generative AI, to the kids."
Amazing.
And I'm like, "What? Okay, cool." Like, but I have not, I don't have much experience teaching kids, so she was like, "Don't worry about it." Paired me up with some of the academic folks who were running that program, and I think my slot was like 9 to 11 or 12-year-olds, and yeah, man, when I got there, to my surprise, they were already like my part of like showing them some generative AI tools, tips, tricks, etc. And it was a very practical session because you can't keep attention of those kids for very long. We had laptops everywhere. It was about, they had already sort of set up a stage where for the last 2 days, these kids were learning about how to create, or they were rather tasked with creating business ideas. And so they were actually there thinking about what, if I was going to start a business with my friends, it can be about anything you want. And, the kids, right? So great ideas though. Like one group, a girl and a boy were like, they created a thing called kindness in a box. And it's like, okay, what's that? But it was literally a subscription, and it's like subscription service. It gets delivered every month, and it's basically inspirational quotes, but on these beautifully like carved pieces of wood and card and like all this stuff. And it's basically these inspirational things that you can sort of dot around your house. It also comes with a candle and a this and a that. And it's like, I know people who'd pay for that. Do you know what I mean? And so what I taught them was then like, okay, cool. If you guys have these ideas, which I didn't expect, here's how you can sort of leverage AI to, imagine what a poster would look like, or imagine what the product packaging might look like, or think about like, what when somebody's using it, how they would interface with it. So the key to, I guess, the answer, whether it's kids or adults, man, is that we kind of get the opportunity. This is a great reset.
Yeah.
We get the opportunity to imagine again.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing,
I think it's one of the great things about having kind of kids in the house now at home, and obviously that's how we met. Our kids obviously were in the same NCT class. That you get to go back to that sort of, and the Legos come out.
Exactly.
Oh, look at that kind of
It's just that.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool.
One thing you realise, like especially with the younger generation, and I know this because I was working volunteering at a school in India, and they're like a tech school, so they learn coding, etc. And we view it from, if you're not in tech, so like people of our generation or even older, because you haven't learned it when you're younger, you have a different perspective on it.
Yeah.
And we think, how are kids going to learn this? How are they going to navigate this environment? But like actually, it's like a language, English or any other language. Kids that are learning coding from a young age adopt it really quickly, and for them, they don't know anything different, and then the adoption becomes a lot easier, which is super interesting. Like, see, even with AI, a kid will probably pick it up a lot quicker than we ever would.
Yes.
Like,